To What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Usual. Woo!
You will work on that.
Hey, get excited, get excited. This should be the most exciting time of your life because we're helping you to navigate your life to get you to where you want to be. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was somebody who was tuning into this and I know that every single episode was helping me to create a roadmap to get me where I want to be, I would be excited about my life because I know where I'm going, I know where I'm headed, and I'm knowing how to get there. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about where are you headed and how to find clarity and confidence in your next move. So all of these other episodes, like we've been doing the Where Are You series, right? And every single episode has been tailored to help you to create a roadmap for your life. So this is kind of give you a brief overview of what we discussed so far. So we first talked about where you stuck, right? And we talked about the barriers and patterns. Then we talked about where are you on your journey? And this is the personal growth timeline. Then we went into where do you want to go? And we helped you to create a vision and goal for where it is that you want to be in life. And now we're going to help you find clarity and confidence to make the next move your best move.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm loving this topic in this series that we're doing because I just feel like honestly that's like the foundation. Like I mean when we were brainstorming this series and like how we wanted it to look, it just felt so timely with everything going on in the world. Just people just wondering, and kind of having these question marks in like certain areas of their life. So I think this topic, and it just makes sense why it's like the final piece to like pull everything in the conversation together, talking about just where are we headed? Because I feel like that's what most people want is they want clarity,
Mm.
but I think that's why this is an important conversation to have because ultimately I feel like the reason why we struggle with this type of thing, like wondering having clarity on the future and having the confidence as we step forward is because there's usually fear there. There's fear and fear to make the wrong move. I feel like that is a big part of the reason why people kind of get stuck, which is, just the purpose of us having this conversation is because if you don't have that clarity on where we're going and what we want and how the path towards this looks, like the whole the whole gist of it, we're not going to be able to make no moves if we're stuck in this the thought pattern, this limiting belief, if you will, of why. I almost like lost my thought there. I was going somewhere else, but I'm gonna go back to where I was going initially. I'm a reel it back. The fear of making the wrong decision. That is my point that I want to make because a lot of us we tend to like get stuck in the thought patterns, the limiting beliefs associated with like thinking like having this expectation of what it looks like, which is ultimately I feel like the resistance in general, because if we have this expectation and life's, which it always does, right? Like it's going to prevent us from thinking we're making progress because we're holding on to this expectation of what we think it should look like. And I feel like that's ultimately why people end up staying stuck and feeling unclear. So it's important to have this conversation about where we are headed because we got to get out of that space. And it's kind of funny, you were telling the story about like this past like week, was it? And
Yeah.
kind of the clarity, I feel like that kind of like ties into this.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Um, yeah, I was having a shitty week and I had to understand where I was in order to understand where I wanted to be and how to get there. And like we make these videos for y'all, but at the same time, we're making these things for ourselves too, because we do struggle with our own challenges as well in life. And this is why we create these roadmaps for ourselves, because no matter how much you learn and grow and stuff like that, there's always going to be obstacles in your life that kind of hinder you from progressing further in your life. And so you have to be able to understand where you are in order to understand how you need to get to where you want to be, right? Which is why we do these things. And I kind of wanted to talk about a little more about the fear aspect of making decisions, right? And I've said this before in previous videos that fear just means false evidence appearing real. So what you're doing is you're creating these false narratives in your mind that keep you from making decisions in your life. And when you're not making decisions in your life, you're essentially telling yourself that, oh, I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself because I've seen where my decisions have gotten me before in the past. And the thing about it is, you can't look at that as um, a measuring tool for how you make decisions, right? You can't look at that as, oh, I made this decision before in the past, so that means the decisions that I make moving forward are not going to be the most sound decisions. Nah, that could be the furthest thing from the truth. You have to understand that you can't create the narrative that hasn't happened yet. You can't create something, you can't create a scenario that hasn't happened yet, because you're not looking at the best case scenario. You're looking at the worst case. And that's the thing that's keeping you stuck and stagnant from making a decision that can literally impact and change your life for the better. And so, yeah, you really have to look at where it is that you are mentally first before you actually look at where you're going to be in the physical. If that makes sense.
I know that definitely makes sense. And then, I mean, another reason I feel like, when we think about this whole question of where we're headed and why we sometimes get stuck in that, so we don't have clarity on where we're headed, is because people struggle with like the external expectations. I feel like that is another reason why not only our internal expectations of ourselves, and what we think a situation should be or a circumstance should be, it's what we feel like society and our family and our friends kind of expect of us. And we kind of internalize it. That becomes the priority to appease that, which is, that's the whole another conversation, how we become people pleasers, right? But at the end of the day, it's like we just hold on so much to what others expect of us, and we let that be kind of our guiding light in life, is like trying to help people and serve other people, rather than, which is what one of the things that I teach like with my clients, and one thing I've like had to grow in an understanding of myself, was this idea of being a little selfish, because I feel like selfish has this negative connotation in just like society in general. But the way I deem selfishness as, I think it is a good attribute to have, because most of us are people pleasers in some way, shape, or form. In some capacity of our life, we show up as people pleasers, and we prioritize other people's feelings and needs and desires above our own.
Mhm.
And I feel like it is important to kind of reel in and be a little selfish, because that means if I'm selfish, which again, positive connotation now, that means like I'm paying attention to my energy, and I am going to set certain boundaries, or only gravitate to certain spaces where I know that I can be in this good energy. You know what I mean? And not only does that help me internally, but that also helps with my output, right? Like, because your energy is affected by like other people around you, and the rooms that you are able to show up in, like the things that you attract in life is affected by that. So that selfishness allows me to have like ultimately like a better life. It affects my relationships, all those things. So like selfishness is actually like a good thing. And I think that is like something that people struggle with, is just kind of internalizing the external expectations.
Mm. I like that. I like that. For me, when I think about external expectations versus internal alignment, the thing that comes up for me is we're all seeking an external goal to reach, which is why we set out to do the things that we're doing. But I think that we don't need to be focused on getting to the goal, but we need to be focused on who we become as we're pursuing the goal. And I think that is so lost when it comes to pursuit of anything, because that's what really causes the fear and the disruption. And this is what throws you off your path, because you see what you want and you see how to get there and you see the work that you're doing, but you're not necessarily seeing a result from the work that you're doing. And so you veer off the path and you take a different route in a whole nother direction that isn't in alignment with the previous goal that you had in place the first time. And so the thing that you don't recognize is who you've become throughout that process. And this is something that has happened to me before in the past, right? Like I will be doing something and doing it, right? And just doing it just for the sake of doing it. But at some point, I wasn't seeing a result from what I was doing. And therefore, I had to switch and I did something else. But when I did do something else, right, I recognized that I was an entirely different person when I was doing this other thing. And I was like, I've really grown a lot, but I didn't know why. And then when I looked back on the thing that I was doing previously, I was like, oh, that's where all that experience came from the thing that I was doing before. And so you really have to take time to measure your growth, not in your business or not in the thing that you're doing, but just measure the growth within yourself. Like, how are you showing up for yourself? How are you speaking to yourself? How do you see the transformations happening within you? Because before the transformations happen without, in your physical reality, you have to see the transformation happen within you. Because at some point when it happens, you're going to look at the reality that you're living in from a whole nother perspective. And if it's a reality that is not in favor of the person that you're becoming, you're going to naturally move out of that environment and move to an environment that's more suited for the person that you're becoming. And that's how the growth happens. That's how you see scalability. You see it first happen within, and then it starts to externalize itself outside of yourself, right? So yeah, really start to see and recognize who you're becoming rather than looking for the things that you're obtaining from the work that you're doing. That's what I say.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that perspective too. And it just kind of makes it a little clearer for people. And kind of like, validating why we struggle. Because if you are focused on the goal and maybe the lack of you not being there yet, then that also, that makes sense as to why we struggle with clarity on the journey, because we're so focused on the wrong thing. And so that kind of ties it in perfectly. Um, and another thing, just thinking about like why we tend to struggle with feeling like we have clarity on where we're headed in general, is I think what we talked about, we touched on it last episode, was talking about the overthinking versus the under deciding. One thing that I will say, like, you need confusion basically before you get the clarity and build the confidence. Like, I feel like that is the guide. I think that's just a different perspective on feeling like it's a negative thing when we're in this space of not knowing where we're headed. Like, because that's truly like part of the journey. Like, to be confused and be like, what the hell am I doing in my life? That is actually a great thing. Like, it's usually those moments that I felt like that led to my biggest transformations. It was just this complete like breakdown of my identity and feeling like, what am I doing? What is my purpose? Who am I? All of those things. And just kind of sitting in this, like, what felt like just like cloudiness of clarity, or lack of, what rather, but that is what led to the big like aha moments for me. So it's like, it's important to just recognize and shift our perspective that it's in those spaces of confusion and doubt and all of those things associated with that actually leads us to the clarity and to the confidence that we actually desire. We just sometimes, like, mentally, we think we have to skip those stages, like we expect to just have already achieved these things, like to know for sure, be grounded in where we're going, to know the action steps. But that's not, like, that's not life.
No, no, that's not. You know, that brings me to a quote. Not all who wander are lost. And that was something that really stuck with me because a lot of people feel like they're not getting anywhere, but really in reality, you're going further than you might think. You just can't see, you just can't see the path clearly yet. But you're going far, fast, even if it don't feel like it. And that kind of made me think about this too. There's a question that I feel like is so hard to answer, but it brings so much perspective to your life. And the question is, who are you? Like, if you ask somebody, who are you outside of your titles, outside of the accolades that you've achieved, like, really, who are you? It gives people a whole nother perspective on life and it makes them see things from a different vantage point, like, who am I? Because now they're asking themselves that question, like, yeah, I've done all these great things, or maybe I've overcome things, or maybe I'm going through things right now, but who am I at my core? I'm not the things that I've gone through, I'm not the things that I have achieved. Who am I truly, right? Um, and when I think about the whole overthinking versus under deciding, I think a lot of that stems from not knowing who you are. And when you don't know who you are, you don't take action because you can be inspired to do something. But if you don't really truly know who you are, meaning if you don't know what you're capable of, then you're not going to make any moves at all. But you'll never know what you're capable of if you don't take any action. And the thing about taking action is you have to be okay with making mistakes, right? And taking chances. And actually, one of my favorite cartoons growing up was the Magic School Bus, right? And Miss Frizzle, for those that know, right, she would always say, "Take chances and make mistakes," and that was something that always stuck with me because it's like, yeah, that's what life is all about. It's just taking chances and making mistakes, but not only that, learning from your mistakes, right? Not looking at them as like, dang, I messed up, but looking at it as, dang, I get an opportunity to learn something that I didn't know about myself. And that's where the who am I comes from. That's where you get the answers from seeing who you are in each and every experience, right? um every experience brings more clarity to the life that you're living because most people are living life on autopilot, right? They don't really know what it is that they're doing until they take a step back and realize, like, I did do that, didn't I? You know how you reflect on some things, you just like some things, it's like it's kind of a blur, and then there's some missing pieces in the story because you weren't fully aware of what you was doing in that moment. But once you become fully aware of what you're doing in each and every experience of your life, you're then able to answer the who am I question because you see who you're becoming throughout the process of going through the experience that you're going through.
No, I love that. And I mean, that's kind of funny. And this is just even more alignment because that's actually a workshop that I have with, like, the who are you, like, walking people from they usually say, like you said, they talk about the titles, they talk about like who they are, maybe brother, I'm a soccer player, I'm a, executive, I'm a whatever the case may be, right? And bringing them into the awareness that no, those are titles, but that's not who you are. And them, like, processing that. Like, it's such a, I think it's a simple question, but it has very profound impact for people to, come into just the arena of thinking of who they are beyond those things. Because like you said, most of us do live in autopilot where we are operating in just those titles. Like, we go from one role to the next in our life rather than the state of being. So, I mean, I think that's kind of like the perfect segue into how we are able to get the clarity on where we're headed, which we talk about getting clear and building the confidence, having the confidence to move forward, having the confidence in the next move. So, what would you say is the way to build that confidence?
What is the way to build that confidence and that self-trust? I would say it would go back to not being afraid to make mistakes. Like, I've learned some of my greatest lessons by just going through the experience, even though I didn't know what I was doing, where I was going, how things worked. You know, I just still just immersed myself in the experience because I knew that at some point you have to realize this. You have to realize that everything that you're afraid of is usually an indicator of this is something that I need to do. Because if I don't do it now, I'm going to spend the rest of my life living in that feeling of being afraid. And that's just what it is. Like when you're introduced to something that is foreign to you, you're afraid of it. It's just natural to be kind of afraid and hesitant to something that you've never experienced before. But the more you lean into that, the more you just kind of go with it, even or just go, yeah, just go with it, the more you start to alleviate that fear because you'll start to realize, like, oh, it's not as bad as or as big as I thought it was. It's not as bad as I thought it was, and it's not as big as I thought it was because initially, things that we're afraid of, they look like towers. They're just towering over us. But once you actually go through the process, you'll start to see it at eye level and be like, oh, you know what? That wasn't even that bad. And you know what else? I'm actually really good at this thing. Or I'm actually in this space and I'm operating it how I'm supposed to. But everybody around you probably doesn't see that because you gravitate or you kind of mingle and mix into that environment so well, right? And this could be talking about a multitude of things, right? But it's all premised around fear, right? It's all premised around doing the things that feel uncomfortable. So I would say lean into the things that are uncomfortable, lean into the things that you're afraid of, and overcome that. That's how you essentially overcome it, just by leaning into it. But how would you give somebody advice on overcoming that confidence and or getting that confidence and building that self-trust?
Well, I mean, I really liked that you talked about the self-trust. I think that makes me think about again where we shift our focus. And essentially we've always, we talked about it. I don't know where I got it from originally, but they talk about like where put your focus on, that's where you put your energy into. And where you put your energy into, that's essentially what you give your power to. And so if you think about like that self-trust, like that just makes me think about the fact that most people's focus is on the outcome, like having certainty that you're going to achieve this certain outcome rather than just this process and the destination being the journey rather than the expectation of what it looks like at the end.
Mm.
Because one thing I've like seen on my journey is a lot of times I might have an idea of a
Mm.
goal, but a lot of times like actually how it comes out, how it looks is very rarely how I saw it. Um, So I feel like that is usually what we tend to focus on. We're thinking like, oh, it has to look like this. But a lot of times it's a culmination of all our experiences and the journey that we have and the things that we face, the mindset shifts we have, like all of that is truly, that's the meat of it. That's literally the beauty in everything. It's not the, okay, this happened. Because even when that happens, it's going to be something else. It's going to be a new thing to like, put our focus on. So
Mm.
that's kind of what comes up for me is just most people feel like I have to have certainty in this like specific outcome rather than just enjoying the space and what is.
Mm. I like that. I like that. That's really good. That is really good. I'm gonna give y'all another tip too. I'm gonna give y'all another tip too. Reframe uncertainty. This is a note. Reframe uncertainty as an opportunity for growth. And essentially what that means is kind of what we already said. The things that you fear the most, lean into it. Look at it as an opportunity to see who you can become as a result rather than to back away from it, right? And the more you start doing that, the more you start to look at that as, oh, this is an opportunity to grow, right? Look at more of the things that scare you as an opportunity to grow. Because the more you start doing that, the more you'll see opportunities to reach higher levels. And then you'll just start to notice like, oh, I've become this person. And now that feeling of fear or uncertainty, it just starts to dissipate. Or you just start to use it differently, really, because all of your feelings, they never really go away, but the way you use them changes. So yeah, I would say that. You kind of covered that too. Um, and we're gonna be talking about this, right? We're gonna give you 3 steps, a 3-step framework that you can use to help you navigate this process even further. So the first thing is recognize where you are right now, right? Recognize where you are right now, like identify with where you currently stand, wherever that may be, however that may look. And once you're able to do that, the second step is identify a small, low pressure action step, meaning just take it one step at a time. Yeah, this goal that you have is mighty and massive, but you need to be able to you need to be able to just shrink it down into bite-sized steps. So you need to be able to see, okay, what can I do right now? Do I need to type something out? Do I need to make a phone call? Do I need to just record a 10-second video? Whatever that looks like for you, make sure that it is a low pressure action step for you. And then finally, take action and adjust as you go. I think this is the most important thing too, as well, because it's like when I was in the military, right? I'm still in the military. We would do this thing called land nav. And when you're doing land nav, you're essentially just you're using a map to navigate where you are on the map and where you need to go. And so you start plotting your points and everything. And then you have this thing called an azimuth, which basically is a compass, which helps you to navigate and figure out where you are. As you're continuing on this process and as you're continuing on this journey, you're going to need to constantly reposition your azimuth to make sure that you're on point. Because if you're 1 degree off, you're going in an entirely different direction. And so as you're taking action on that goal that you have in mind, make sure that you're constantly adjusting to make sure that you're staying on target with that goal. Because 1 degree off can take you in an entirely different direction. So you want to make sure that you're being mindful and keeping track of how you're executing on that goal. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. That is a good framework to kind of use to just get us towards that goal. Because I feel like I really like that second point, like identifying the small step, because I think that is usually the problem. And this is like what I see a lot with my clients, because like you said, it's the big goal and it's this thing. Like I have one client that, she's like, I want to she's like, I want to have like built like her goal was, I want to love myself. But she was looking at it as this big thing. Like, and that's a very abstract thing, right? But it's like when you look at that, it just seems expansive. And sometimes, like just psychologically, having those big goals, sometimes it prevents us from taking the action and seeing this path forward because we're focusing on like that thing over there. That's the thing. I want to love myself. But what does that look like? That's like in building small steps. So we have to do kind of like mindset work to shift the focus to these smaller steps. Because that's what I say, like, it even, I got one client that's like, she's a working professional and her thing is in like her scheduling and things like that. Sometimes she's like, I'm in this pattern of procrastinating. And that's a big thing to think like, oh, okay, I don't want to be a procrastinator anymore. But it's like, no, let's break this down. What does this look like to make it where we have a small step that doesn't seem too far off for us to actually like be able to achieve it? But then also the perspective shift of if we have smaller like goals, and that's what these action steps are, they're just smaller goals that lead to the big goal for us, right? Like, so if I want to not procrastinate, okay, maybe the like one small action or one small goal um is to like no longer when we, want to snooze our thing, and this is something that I did for a long time, was like having calendar stuff come up and then I keep like moving it down, I keep moving it further, like either in my day, in the week, sometimes later in the month, because sometimes just the idea of it was, it just seemed like a lot of work, like mentally. So it's just like, okay, well, maybe that's one step. Now you no longer actually just like move stuff further without intention, or maybe it's not snoozing the thing. Maybe it's not snoozing the alarm that you snooze, every morning 2 or 3 times before you actually get up. That's how we get to the big goal, is to just break it down. And I just feel like that's like such a simple concept, but I think in like real life, like actual like application, people miss. Like it's in those like small things, I feel like. So I just really wanted to like expound on that because I just feel like that's a big reason why we tend to like feel like we don't know where we're headed, because we're looking at a destination that's kind of out of our capacity. It's out of our reach right now.
Mm. I like that. I like the way you put that. It's out of our capacity. So our goal here is to help you increase that capacity so you can do more to get to that goal even quicker. So I really like that. That was really, really well put.
And then just to like add the little icing on the top too, I think a big part of that is it also kind of cheats our brain into thinking we have, I mean, and it's not even a cheat, it's a hack, because our brain now registers more wins. Like if
Mm,
we have smaller goals to achieve, like we're able to like we achieve it and then it's like, oh snap, like our brain registered is like, hey, I've reached the goal. And the
mm,
thing about it is the body keeps the score, right? And that's even with like positive things in our bodies. So it's like our body doesn't know the difference between achieving that big goal that's far, far off, and then the goal that we have that was just like felt like a baby step for us.
mm.
It still feels like a win in our body. So it's also like a hack to kind of improve our own energy system and how we feel about ourselves, the confidence, like this is part of it. So I feel like that was a major shift for me in my journey, was kind of like shifting that perspective, because it's like, yeah, like who doesn't want to have like feel like they have more wins? Most of us don't actually register our wins. Like we don't see it. And that's why we say get the coach, right? Because the coach will sometimes see the wins that we don't see.
Mm. Facts. Big facts. Get you a coach, y'all. Hey, you looking at one right now. Hey,
Click the
get you a
link.
coach.
Click the link in the description.
All right, y'all. So now we're going to give you some practical steps to help you get unstuck. Now, these are some things that you can implement right now, like literally right now, as you're watching this video, you can implement these steps to help you get started and get unstuck. So that way you can start taking action and start making decisions that'll put you in positions to elevate your life.
Like right
So,
now.
like right now, like
Oh, okay.
right now. So the first thing we're going to give you is it's an instinctive exercise. And essentially, this is designed to help you exercise the trust and belief in your instinct, right? So first you're going to ask yourself, if I had to decide today, I would blank, 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 fill in the blanks. Whatever comes to your mind, stick with that decision and then allow your intuition to give you a roadmap to help you execute on that. And do it within a short amount of time, like literally give yourself no more than 5 seconds to execute on that decision. So that way you eliminate the overthinking and the doubt. And this allows you to build that faith muscle, that instinctive muscle. So that way you can start making good sound decisions. Now, is that to say that
Well, I challenge that because I feel like too, you say give yourself 5 seconds. And I feel like for people like us, if we give ourselves that time, it's still going to be manufactured because we're focused on like, oh, within this time frame. So I think the instinctive part is to really just focus on, okay, us, I got a question. If you had to decide today, what would be the priority?
Yep,
Whatever you just thought of, that's it. Whatever
that's
you
it.
just like whatever came up for you. We ain't gotta put no time in that thing that wherever your brain went, what was that for you?
Leave it
What
down in the comments.
No, I'm asking you.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you, what came up for you?
Oh, if I had to decide the day,
Yeah.
if I had to decide the day,
I mean, I
I
was asking the audience, but I was also asking you.
oh bet. All right. If I had to decide today, I would make a video on meditation. Make a 10-second video on meditation. Yeah, that's what I would do.
I like it. I like it.
What about you? If you had to decide today, what would you do?
It would be engaging on LinkedIn with the connections,
Mm,
like
mm,
building community on LinkedIn. That's definitely
mm.
what came up for me.
Now, this is a perfect example of what it means to have a roadmap, because even if we didn't have a roadmap, we would have made these decisions regardless. But the fact that we both have roadmaps and we know exactly where we're headed and we have these things broken down in incremental goals, our instincts immediately kick in and know exactly what it is that we need to do to push us to the next level. And if you start implementing the things that we're teaching you in these videos, you're going to be able to activate that instinct on command, like boom. You ain't even got to really think too much about what it is that you have to do. You're just going to act. As soon as the thought comes to you, you take the inspired action. Perfect example.
Action. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. The
Uh,
next thing you're going to do an energy audit, right? So you're going to recognize what energizes you and what drains you. Now, I feel like you're really good when it comes to understanding the things that energize you and the things that drain you. And maybe people don't really know the difference, or they can't differentiate because they're in this people pleaser mentality. So, how would you help somebody to like recognize that what energizes you versus what drains you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is something that I guide with like my clients through. I actually have part of my soulful success system. I have a time and energy audit, like worksheet and exercise that I have my clients do. And essentially it's to help like pinpoint, because again, most of us like we tend to be on autopilot. We are just constantly in the state of like survival mode a lot of times, and we have to be intentional like before you can get to the space of kind of being at a certain level, it takes a lot of time and practice to get to that level of intention. But we usually do have to. It takes like a audit like this. This is kind of why I created it, to actually make us stop and pay attention to what drains us and what energizes us, and ultimately it is one of the biggest signals, and this is something I talk about all the time, is like how we are feeling, because that is the feelings that we have, whether it's irritation, like if you have conversations with a certain family member and every time you end up being irritated for the rest of the day, like that is a signal for you that either you need to set some boundaries, or, whatever the case may be, you need to shift something. You need to make a change, right? And I feel like it's not until we can like actually see things on paper and like in real time track the types of feelings we're having. If we're, anxious every time we wake up, that's a signal for us to be a little more curious. What is this, what is this connected to? Is there a certain thought I'm having when I wake up in the morning? Like just really paying attention to those like small things that actually are big things, but it's just things we tend to brush over because it's just, oh, I was irritated. Oh, this happens. This is just a part of life. But actually, like, no, let's get curious about these things. So feelings is definitely one. And just kind of looking at, I mean, especially if you're like a professional like me who has their life in their calendar, right? Looking at those types of things. And then also just kind of doing a compare and contrast. What events were associated with certain feelings, with certain levels of my energy? Like, was I always low energy at work? Or, whatever the case may be, like looking at these types of things to kind of pinpoint and help us to have this deeper understanding of what we need to, kind of like what we talked about in our first season, rinse, wash, repeat. I know we both had our different perspectives on it, but I actually incorporated that into my program, in my soulful success system. Essentially, the rinse, wash, repeat being, rinse is something that we need to like water down. We need to adjust something a little bit, not completely take it away, and not sustain it, but like shift it in some way, shape, or form. And then wash being what we do need to remove, things that no longer serve us for whatever reason. And then the repeat, that's the thing that we want to reinforce, that we want to keep, and sustain. So just kind of doing that as a check. That's what I got my clients through, but just in a more in real time, like based on their circumstances in life.
I like that. I like a lot of that. And you know what else? I also want to add this too, right? Understand the difference between growing pains and energy drains. Because I feel like the line between those two can get blurred as well. You got to understand that whatever it is that you're doing for the first time, if it's something that you decided on doing, it's going to cost a lot of energy in the beginning. And that could drain you, but in a positive way, because later on that gives a return, versus something that is just taking from you and not giving a return back. So that would be another thing I would tell people to do, is understand the difference between a growing pain and an energy drain. And I'll land my plane.
That's dope. So then, I mean, ultimately, we've talked about a few things here, just kind of getting, I think we now have a deeper understanding and a different perspective on this state of confusion, if you will, that some of us may have felt like we're in, and kind of associating that with like a negative, a negative connotation to it, just thinking that it's a bad space to be in. But it's actually, again, just a reframe of that us needing to be in that space to lead us to the clarity and the confidence that we desire. And then just, looking at the reasons why we tend to feel like we're stuck in those things, and what was that? We talked about the overthinking versus under deciding, and what else did we talk about? I felt like wasn't there one other thing? Look at me losing track of the episode.
Overthinking versus under deciding, internal expectations versus
Yeah. Yeah. And then the fear, we talked about the fear too of like making the wrong decision, and that internal alignment as well. So, and then just like looking at how we can build confidence in the next move. And you gave that like framework, which was really dope, of like recognizing where we're at, identifying like a small step for us that can essentially get us to the space of breaking down the big goal into something smaller and more like palatable. And then also the shift of realizing that if we do that, we are able to actually celebrate more wins. And in that sense, we are building the confidence that we need to get the clarity on our path forward. Because sometimes, I mean, we all want that validation in some way, and that happens through those like small steps, those wins, and then just actually doing the thing, like taking the action. And then we gave that energy audit. I love that instinctive exercise that you brought up. If I had to decide today, and that's something I feel like we can actually ask ourselves, like on a daily basis, like what, giving us clarity on a day rather than a clarity on our month or our year. Let's focus on the day, this hour. If I had to decide right now, what's the thing? I feel like that's something that we can implement like in our day-to-day life. So what is like a final tip that you have, or a reflection to help someone in the audience with this perspective?
All right. So, in closing, to land this whole plane, this will be my final thing for everybody. Finding direction isn't about a perfect plan, but it's about trusting yourself to take the next step. So, everything that we described to you is just essentially that. It's just giving yourself the ability and the faith and the trust in taking that next step. You don't need to take these big giant steps, but everything that we laid out for you today is just to take that one small step, because one step at a time leads towards major steps that catapult you towards your goal faster than you may think. And I know that we live in a fast consumption society, and there's social media that tends to feel like you're behind. But really, in reality, you're much further ahead than you may think. But it starts with the simple things. It starts with the small things. It starts with what you can do right here, right now, in this moment. So again, it's not about it's not about having the perfect plan. It's not about having the greatest layout so you can just boom go. But it's just about, okay, what's that first step that I can take? And then finally, I want to ask y'all this too. And y'all can leave this in the comments. What's one decision you've been overthinking that you can simplify today? What's that one decision that you've been thinking about, that you've been overthinking about, that you can simplify today? Leave it down in the comment sections. And as always, thank you for being on this journey with us. And thank you for allowing us to be on this journey with you. And I truly believe we do better when we grow together. So let's continue to grow with one another. And if you found this helpful, inspiring in any way, shape, or form, make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, click the notification bell to get notified whenever another video gets published. And again, I'm gonna phrase the question to you again. What's one decision you've been overthinking that you can simplify today? Leave it down in the comment section now.
I look forward to seeing what y'all got.
For sure, for sure.
Till next time, y'all.
This has been another episode of Beyond the Usual. And until next time, peace and progress.